Well, hello. Today we're going to go through John chapter 18 again. Now, at the conclusion of Jesus' final meal with the disciples, they have the foot washing, the great high priestly prayer. Following that, they go into the Garden of Gethsemane. And there will begin the final drama of Jesus' earthly life, which will end with his crucifixion. Now, following Jesus' prayer in the garden, Judas arrives with an absolute veritable army of Jewish soldiers and Roman soldiers and Jewish leaders. And Jesus, always in control, steps forth to meet them. Verses 4 through 5. So Jesus, knowing all things that were coming upon him, went forth and said to them, "Whom do you seek?" They answered, "Jesus the Nazarene." And he said to them, "I am he." Now, Jesus is not afraid. He goes boldly forward to engage his enemy, Satan. And Jesus is unarmed. He is apparently helpless before this great throng. And yet, actually, Jesus has great divine spiritual resources at his behest because he's obeying his Father. And so when he speaks, it's with such force, it says that the soldiers actually fell back. Now, this is the beginning of Jesus' great victory. Just a couple of hours before, in the high priestly prayer, John 17:1, he said these words, "Father, the hour has come. Glorify your Son, that the Son may glorify you." So this is his hour of greatest glorification. Now, Peter at this point takes forth his sword and lashes out at one of those who've come to arrest Jesus. And Jesus says to him, "Peter, put your sword back." Now, Matthew and I think some of the other Gospels add the words that Jesus also said, he that uses the sword will perish by the sword. In other words, whatever is built up by human force will later be destroyed by human force. Every kingdom built by the sword, including the great Roman Empire, was later destroyed by the sword. Now, Jesus later said something important to Pilate the very next morning, early in the morning. John 18:36, he said, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then my servants would be fighting so that I would not be handed over." And so he makes the point, human government has been given the sword. We read about that in Romans 13. But to the church, God has given something far more powerful, far more wonderful. He's given us the keys to his spiritual kingdom. Now, whatever God builds through his kingdom will endure. It will not be destroyed like the other kingdoms. It's an unshakable kingdom amidst all the shakeable works of men. If God builds it, it will endure. Can I suggest you make sure you let God build your works, your world, your life? Don't try to build it with your own wisdom and strength, because if God builds it, it will endure. Now, all the disciples flee. And Jesus is taken to first the house of Annas and then the house of Caiaphas. And Peter follows at a distance, and he enters into the courtyard of Annas. And there he encounters a servant girl. And listen to that exchange, verse 17. Then the slave girl who kept the door said to Peter, "You are not also one of this man's disciples, are you?" And he said, "I am not." Now, this is really amazing. The same Peter who just a few hours before had argued with Jesus and said, "Even though all others fall away, I will not fall away." You read that in the other accounts. Right here now is falling before this woman, this young slave girl. Now, Jesus had said to Peter, "Before the cock crows twice, you will deny me 3 times. And Peter did deny Jesus 2 more times. Let's read now in verse 26. This is the 3rd time. One of the slaves of the high priest, being a relative of the one whose ear Peter cut off, said, "Did I not see you?" So eyewitness, "Did I not see you in the garden with him?" But Peter then denied it again, and immediately a rooster crowed. Now, the other Gospels add this information that this is the most dangerous accusation. This was an eyewitness. And so Peter not only denied Jesus, but he cursed and he swore. And it adds the information also that when he heard the cock crow, then Peter wept deep tears. He was broken. Now, the truth is that Jesus knew Peter better than Peter knew himself. Peter overestimated his own strength. He overestimated his own courage, and he underestimated his vulnerability. He overestimated his strength, but he underestimated the power of temptation. Let's see how this is illustrated in that night. First of all, after leaving the upper room, they go to the garden. Now, Jesus prays for strength, and he tells Peter to pray too. But Peter doesn't pray, he sleeps. He's overconfident. Jesus knew that he was facing a great test, and he needed strength. But Peter was also facing a great test. Jesus had just told him an hour earlier, but Peter is unlistening. He's too confident in himself. Next, he follows at a distance, and he enters into Caiaphas' courtyard. In other words, he puts himself in temptation where he didn't belong. Peter, like us, has too much confidence in his own strength. He has too little faith in Jesus' words. You know, a lot of times we don't pay attention to Jesus' assessment of ourselves and our weakness. And we place too much confidence. And we don't place enough faith in Jesus and his ability to keep us. Keep in mind that after Jesus had told Peter he would deny him 3 times, in one of the other Gospels, he then says, "But Peter, I have prayed for you, that your faith may not fail, and that once you have turned again, you will strengthen your brothers." We got to be wary of putting too much strength and confidence in our own ways and our own ideas and our plans, and doubting Jesus, his true words and his ability to keep us. Now the chapter ends with Jesus before Pilate the next morning, and this is where Jesus declares that his kingdom is a spiritual kingdom. And then Pilate, deducing that Jesus is innocent and that he has done nothing to deserve death, he invokes the Jewish tradition that at Passover, the governor, that is Pilate, would release a prisoner. And so he puts forth Jesus as the person that should be released. But the Jewish leaders and the crowds aren't having it. Verse 40. So they cried out again, saying, "Not this man, but Barabbas." And now Barabbas was a liar. And so Jesus takes the place meant for Barabbas, and Barabbas is released. And so Barabbas becomes the first of billions of people that are saved because this innocent man, Jesus, took his place and died on the cross. Isn't our salvation a wonderful thing? Well, God bless you, and I hope you have a very wonderful day.